Hi guys, and welcome on Cheaters&Jerks. This channel is about real-life cheating stories and consequences.
By the time they left, the house was unrecognizable. Trash littered every surface, bottles and cans strewn across the floor. The sheets beneath me were soaked with sweat, urine, and other fluids. The smell overpowering. My body was a canvas of bruises and scratches, wrists and ankles raw from the restraints. But let's start from the beginning, right after your subscription to this channel. I lounged on the couch in our living room, my finger hovering over my phone screen. The TV droned on in the background, some mindless reality show I couldn't care less about. Tom was still at work, probably hunched over his computer, lost in lines of code. I sighed, feeling that familiar ache of loneliness creep in. 8 years of marriage, and here I was, scrolling through my phone on a Friday night. Don't get me wrong, I love Tom. He's stable, dependable, everything I thought I wanted. But lately, it felt like we were just going through the motions. Work, dinner, sleep, repeat. The spark was gone, and I was desperate to feel something. Anything. My thumb paused over a link that caught my eye. Local swingers club, for those seeking the forbidden. My heart rate picked up as I clicked, eyes widening, as I read about the parties, the secrecy, the thrill of it all. A voice in the back of my mind whispered that this was wrong, that I should close the app and forget about it. But a louder part of me, the part starved for excitement, urged me on. It's not really cheating, I murmured to myself, trying to justify the unjustifiable. It's just exploration, no emotions involved. Before I could talk myself out of it, I filled out the application form, my hands shaking slightly as I hit submit. The week dragged by in a blur of client meetings and half-hearted attempts at normalcy with Tom. But my mind was elsewhere, imagining what awaited me at the party. When Friday finally rolled around, I told Tom I was meeting some girlfriends for drinks. He barely looked up from his laptop, just nodded and told me to have fun. The guilt I felt was quickly overshadowed by anticipation. I arrived at the party, my red dress hugging every curve. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. The venue was a stunning home, all sleek lines and mood lighting. As I stepped inside, the scent of perfume and cologne mingled in the air, along with something else. Desire, maybe? Welcome, a sultry voice greeted me. A statuesque blonde handed me a glass of champagne, her fingers brushing mine. First time? I nodded, taking a sip to steady my nerves. That obvious, huh? She laughed, a rich, inviting sound. We were all new once. Relax, have fun, no pressure. As I moved through the crowd, I felt eyes on me, appreciative glances, flirtatious smiles. It was intoxicating. A tall, dark-haired man caught my eye, raising his glass in a silent toast. I smiled back, feeling bolder by the second. You look absolutely delicious. A woman purred in my ear, her hand trailing down my arm. Care to join us upstairs? I didn't even hesitate. Lead the way. The next few hours were a blur of sensation. Hands, lips, skin on skin. The guilt I'd expected to feel never came. Instead, I was awash in pure, unadulterated pleasure. As I drove home in the early hours of the morning, I felt more alive than I had in years. That first party opened the floodgates. I became a regular, showing up week after week, diving deeper into this new world. Each time, I pushed my boundaries a little further. 3 ways, group scenarios, even a bit of light bondage. I was insatiable, drunk on the power of my own desires. At home, I played the part of the devoted wife. I'd greet Tom with a kiss, ask about his day, all while my mind replayed scenes from the night before. Sometimes, I'd catch myself smiling at a particularly vivid memory, and Tom would ask what I was thinking about. I'd just shake my head and say, nothing important. But as the weeks turned into months, even the parties started to lose their luster. I craved more control, more intensity. The idea hit me like a bolt of lightning. I'd host my own party, right here in our home. The thought of transforming our living room, our bedroom, into a den of debauchery sent a shiver down my spine. I started planning in secret, making lists of supplies, thinking about who to invite. The anticipation was almost as thrilling as the act itself. I imagined Tom's face, if he ever found out, and for a moment I felt a pang of remorse. But I pushed it aside. This was about me, about feeling alive again. As I lay in bed that night, Tom's arm draped over me. I couldn't help but smile. In just a few short weeks, these walls would witness things they'd never seen before. And I couldn't wait. "Hey babe, I got some news." Tom glanced up from his laptop. "What's up?" I asked, pretending to be interested, though my mind buzzed with other plans. "I have a weekend work trip coming up. Thought I'd let you know now so you can make plans." Or whatever. Feigning disappointment, I sighed. "Oh, that's too bad. I had hoped we could spend some time together." He walked over, planting a quick kiss on my forehead. "Duty calls. I'll be back before you know it." The moment Tom walked out the door, my disappointment vanished. I grabbed my phone and furiously typed out invitations to my swinger friends. This was it. The night I'd been dreaming about for months. I spent hours transforming the house. The living room needed that special touch. Low lights cast seductive shadows across the walls. The playlist I curated simmered with sensual beats. Kitchen counters, much too clinical, became a buffet of drinks and snacks. The change in atmosphere turned the home into a playground of forbidden indulgence. My heart pounded with excitement as I moved upstairs, my final masterpiece. Fresh silk sheets were placed meticulously. Candles, both for light and mood, stood ready at each corner of the room, scarves draped from the bedposts, teasing the savage fantasies I knew were coming. As I smoothed the sheets, I couldn't help but imagine myself tied down, completely at the mercy of lusty strangers. I slipped into my new lingerie, a sheer black set barely covering anything, accentuating every curve. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt more alive than ever. They arrived as the last light left the sky. Couples and singles made their way inside, dressed in seductive outfits that matched the night's theme. Laughter, whispers, and stolen kisses filled the air, a symphony of tension and anticipation. I mingled effortlessly, drawing in the attention like a moth to a flame. I was in my element. By midnight, energy buzzed at its peak. Bodies moved, swayed, paired off, disappearing into corners and guest rooms. I guided the remaining eager faces upstairs, each step deliberate, dripping with confidence. They followed, drawn to me like bees to nectar. Once in the bedroom, I let my robe slip off, revealing the fine threads that barely concealed my intent. Climbing onto the bed, I stretched myself, arms and legs spread. 2 eager guests stepped up, binding my wrists and ankles with the silky scarves. Tight, unwavering, perfect. The room erupted in cheers and whistles, every eye fixated on me, an offering and a promise. The guests took turns with me, each moment more consuming than the last. I reveled in it, every sensation heightened, every touch aflame. I was their willing plaything, lost to the veracity of their desires. Out of nowhere, a loud crash shattered the room's hedonistic harmony. The door banged open, freezing everyone in their tracks. Tom stood there, wild-eyed and furious, his phone lifted and capturing every damning detail. Our eyes locked, and for a moment, everything stilled. My stomach dropped, terror squeezing my heart. Tom's eyes burned with rage. "Melissa!" My name ripped from his throat, volcanic and seething. "Tom, let me explain." But he wasn't listening. He wasn't looking at me. His anger was a tidal wave. He pummeled into the room, grabbing one man by the collar, hurling him into the floor like a rag doll. Another guest was yanked and shoved towards the door. One by one, Tom's fury emptied the room, his strength unstoppable. Bound and helpless, I screamed and thrashed, sobs racking my body. Tom, please, let me explain. Once the room stood empty except for us, Tom moved to the foot of the bed. His voice came low, dripping with venom. We're done, Melissa. I'm divorcing you, and this video ensures you get nothing. His words sliced through the air, each one a jagged piece of reality. Without another look, Tom turned and walked out, leaving the door gaping open behind him. Silence crushed in, heavier than anything physical. I lay there, bound and broken, the weight of my choices sinking deep into the marrow of my bones. Lying motionless in bed, I felt the silk scarves dig into my wrists and ankles. Once a pristine sanctuary, our marital bedroom now looked like a desolate wasteland. Spilled drinks, discarded clothing, and the lingering scent of strangers filled the air. Every muscle in my body ached from the night's relentless activities. My throat raw from screaming. I knew Tom was long gone, though, and no one was coming for me. Tears streaked my cheeks as I struggled against the restraints. My skin was red and raw from hours of pulling against the knots. The shame of being unable to relieve myself weighed heavily on my mind as I felt the wet warmth of urine pooling beneath me. Each creak of the house made me freeze, heart racing with the fear Tom might return, or worse, someone else might enter. Silence engulfed the house, amplifying every small noise and intrusive thought. Guilt tried to creep in through my haze of exhaustion, but waves of humiliation and anger kept drowning it out. I cursed Tom for walking out, leaving me like this, but I cursed myself more for orchestrating the night that led to my downfall. A faint creak from the front door jarred me from my half-sleep. My ears strained, hope flickering in my chest. Maybe Tom had come back to untie me, to at least talk. I held my breath, listening to the shuffle of heavy footsteps and the low murmur of voices. Relief quickly turned to unease as the voices grew louder, coarse, and unfamiliar. The smell hit me first, a sour mix of unwashed bodies, alcohol, and stale cigarettes. As the figures appeared in the doorway, my heart plummeted. A group of ragged homeless men stood there, faces dirty and eyes alight with curiosity and malice. They were clearly drunk, stumbling over themselves as they pointed and laughed at my bound and helpless form. "Please leave," I cried, voice cracking with desperation. They ignored me, spreading out into the room like scavengers. One grabbed a bottle of leftover alcohol, chugging it down, while another rifled through a drawer, tossing its contents onto the floor. I thrashed against the restraints, screaming at them to stop, but my pleas only drew more laughter. "Look at this fancy place." "Jackpot," one of them slurred, rummaging through my belongings. One of them stepped closer, his grin revealing yellowed teeth. He reached out, running a grimy hand along my leg. I flinched, stomach churning at his touch. Screaming, I twisted my body in a futile attempt to escape, but the scarves held me fast. "Look at this one," another slurred, circling the bed, "all tied up and waiting for us." "Stop. Please, just leave." The tears streamed down my face, desperation seeping into my voice. The first man climbed onto the bed, his weight pressing down on me. His breath reeked of alcohol as he leaned close, muttering crude remarks. "Just our lucky night, boys. Didn't know we'd find such a pretty little thing." The others watched, jeering and egging him on until they, too, began taking turns with me. I wanted to disappear, my body going numb as my mind spiraled into a haze of fear and disgust. I screamed until my voice gave out, cries muffled by their grunts and laughter. Each rough touch and careless movement pushed me further into a pit of despair. By the time they left, the house was unrecognizable. Trash littered every surface, bottles and cans strewn across the floor. The sheets beneath me were soaked with sweat, urine, and other fluids, the smell overpowering. My body was a canvas of bruises and scratches, wrists and ankles raw from the restraints. Limp, energy, drained, I listened to the distant noise of their laughter as they stumbled out the door. I wanted to cry, but found I had no tears left. I felt like a shell, stripped of all dignity and power. The room was cold. The breeze from the open door raised goosebumps on my skin. I stared at the ceiling, unable to process the full extent of what had just happened. Shame and regret gnawed at me, but they were drowned out by a deep, hollow numbness. Hours could have passed, or mere minutes. Time had lost all meaning. The gnawing chill of the open door made me shiver, breaking the fog of my thoughts. I needed to get free. Gathering what little strength I had left, I attempted to loosen the knots with jerky, desperate movements, but nothing was helping. I lay there, my body aching and my mind numb, when I heard the familiar sound of a car pulling into our driveway. My heart raced, a confusing mix of hope and fear coursing through me. The front door opened, and I listened intently to the steady footsteps I knew so well. Tom was home. As he reached the bedroom, I saw him stop in the doorway. His eyes scanned the chaos, overturned furniture, stained sheets, and finally, me. I could feel his gaze on my battered body, but his face remained unreadable. What the hell happened here? His voice was low, cold, cutting through the silence like a knife. I tried to speak, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but my lips only quivered. How could I possibly explain the nightmare of the past 24 hours? The party, the homeless men, the utter destruction of our home and marriage. It all seemed too surreal, too horrific to put into words. Tom didn't wait for my answer. He strode over to me, his movements precise and detached. Without a word, he began untying the scarves that bound my wrists and ankles. I winced as the fabric slid across my raw skin, but Tom didn't seem to notice or care. As soon as I was free, he pulled out a folder from his jacket and thrust it into my hands. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. Divorce papers. The finality of it hit me like a punch to the gut. Unable to stand, I collapsed to the floor at his feet. I clutched at his legs, my fingers digging into the fabric of his pants as if I could physically hold on to our marriage. "Please, Tom," I sobbed, my voice hoarse and desperate. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Please give me another chance. I love you. I'll do anything. Please." My words devolved into incoherent pleas, tears streaming down my face as I begged for forgiveness. But Tom remained unmoved. He stood there, rigid and cold, looking down at me with an expression of pure disgust. After what felt like an eternity, he stepped back, easily breaking free from my grasp. I looked up at him, silently pleading, but his eyes were hard and unforgiving. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone once again. 3 months later, I sat in the cold, unyielding chair in a courtroom that smelled faintly of varnish and desperation. The air buzzed with hushed murmurs, but it all sounded like static to me. My palms were slick with sweat, clutching at the edges of the thin folder my lawyer had handed me earlier. My stomach churned, feeling hollow and weighted at the same time, a knot that wouldn't untie no matter how hard I willed it. Across the room, Tom sat, a fortress of control in a tailored navy suit. His face was hard, impassive, like he'd braced himself for this day, and carried not a single doubt about the outcome. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispering something, and Tom nodded, his eyes flicking briefly in my direction before returning to the judge. That one glance was enough to pierce right through me. Cold, sharp, an executioner's blade without apology. "Melissa Walker," the judge's voice rang out, stern and detached, pulling me out of my haze. I straightened in my seat, though my shoulders felt like lead. "The court will now review the evidence submitted by the petitioner." I didn't need to look to know what was coming next. The large screen on the wall flickered to life, and suddenly, there it was, that night, laid bare for everyone to see in horribly vivid detail. I kept my eyes down, staring at the polished wood floor as if it could swallow me whole. I couldn't watch. I didn't need to. I already knew every frame of that video, every damning angle, every moment of my life unraveling. The sound came next: laughter, moans, the clinking of glasses, voices I barely recognized anymore. And then my voice, slurred and careless, laughing at something I couldn't even recall. My chest tightened as the audio shifted to the part where I clenched my fists against my lap, the folder crumpling slightly under my fingers. I didn't dare glance around the room, but I felt it. Everyone's eyes, boring into me, their disgust palpable. Tom's lawyer began narrating the events on the screen, his tone clinical, dispassionate, cutting. Every word felt like a dagger twisting in my gut. When the footage reached the part where I was tied to the bed, I heard someone cough. Whether from discomfort or judgment, I didn't know. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. The screen went black, and the sudden silence was deafening. I finally dared to look up just for a second to see the judge's face. Her expression gave nothing away, but her eyes, they had that same glint I'd seen so many times in Tom's. Disappointment, contempt, like I was something sticky on the sole of her shoe. "Miss Walker," she said, her voice like granite, "do you have anything to say in your defense?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I couldn't form words, couldn't string together a coherent thought. My lawyer cleared his throat and stood, launching into some prepared statement about temporary lapses in judgment, emotional strain, and how I'd contributed in my ways to the household. His voice buzzed in my ears, distant and weak. My gaze drifted back down. Tom didn't move. He didn't even flinch. He sat there like a king, watching an enemy grovel. And grovel I would have, if I'd thought it would have made any difference. The judge held up a hand, silencing whatever half-hearted argument my lawyer was making. She flipped through the papers in front of her, pausing occasionally like she was savoring the decision she had already made. And then she spoke. "This court finds in favor of the petitioner, Thomas Walker. The division of assets will reflect a 70-30 split in favor of Mr. Walker due to the overwhelming evidence presented. Ms. Walker will retain personal belongings but no claim to shared properties, savings, or investments." The words hit like a hammer, each one sinking me deeper into the abyss. My throat burned, but I forced myself to keep from crying. Not here, not in front of him, not where everyone would see me crack. The gavel struck once, ending it. I barely felt myself stand or move. The courtroom emptied around me, the murmurs of strangers threading through the static in my brain. She deserved it. Unbelievable what people think they can get away with. Poor guy, really. I walked out of the courthouse in a daze, my lawyer sticking close, mumbling something about appeals, and asking how I wanted to proceed. I ignored him, waving him off as I reached the steps outside. The sun was blinding, making me squint as I came to an uneasy stop. My knees wobbled like they might buckle. "Melissa!" His voice cut through me like a wire pulled taut. I turned my head slowly, and there he was, standing just a few feet away. I flinched at the sight of him, towering and purposeful, his presence as suffocating now as it had been comforting before. He stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. He looked down at me, his mouth forming a tight line before curling into a smirk. "You look like shit," he muttered, low enough for only me to hear. I didn't respond. What could I possibly say? Tom leaned in, closing the distance between us. His breath brushed against my ear as he spoke, his tone icy and calm. "Those homeless guys?" My skin chilled instantly. That was my work. The words hung in the air, stabbing through my chest with a slow, deliberate precision. I drew in a sharp breath, my pulse roaring in my ears as my brain struggled to process what he'd just said. My head snapped toward him, but he was already pulling back, his expression unreadable. He didn't wait for a reaction. He adjusted his shirt cuffs, gave me one last unreadable glance, and then turned, walking away without looking back. His form disappeared into the bustling crowd, melding into the city like he'd never existed, taking any shred of hope I had left with him. My legs gave out. I crumpled onto the courthouse steps, my hands trembling, and my throat finally releasing the sobs I'd been holding back. The sound was ugly, raw, escaping in short bursts as I covered my face to shield myself from the world. But it didn't matter. The world had already seen everything. There was nothing left to hide. Hey everyone! If you found this story gripping and want more jaw-dropping tales, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you're always in the loop. Always in the loop. Always in the loop. Always